Once you finish tracing all of your pencil lines in Sharpie, then it's time to start adding in your value. Give some thought to obviously what colors make sense. It might make it a little bit easier to read my word if they are all the same color, and then maybe these are different colors. We also obviously want to use value, thinking about what makes sense for my lightest value and my darkest values. If my light source is my hand and it's kind of shining here, then the fronts of all my letters and shapes would be the lightest, and then as the form moves away from the light source and towards the vanishing point, it should get darker. So kind of consider those things. Also keep in mind that we will eventually be cutting this out. So if you accidentally kind of go outside of your shapes into the background, it's not really a big deal because we will be cutting it out. Aren't sure how certain colors will layer and affect each other, before you commit to doing it on your final copy, just give it a quick test on your sketch paper just to make sure that you like the way those colors layer before you commit to doing it on your final paper. Remember, the first thing you want to do is lay down an even value on the front of your shapes and the sides. This will in the end give us a much more saturated letter or shape. Because this P is kind of receiving direct light from my light source, and this is a side that's angled away, I'm making this one slightly darker because it's probably in shadow. This part here is a curve, so it might get kind of dark towards the bottom, and maybe it lightens up towards the top of the curve to kind of give that illusion that it's a little bit more rounded. I'm also going to layer kind of that analogous color or kind of darker color on top. So I might take my darker green, or you could use blue, just to kind of go back and highlight even further that this is a darker kind of space. Taking the time to add that second layer of color on top really does add a lot more depth and dimension to your artwork. Don't forget to also add a little bit of that analogous color to the top side so that it's not just one flat plain color. Remember that value scales are a gradual and slow change from light to dark, so try to make sure you have dark darks, light lights, and then some nice midtones. You can see how much more depth and volume the one that has some shading has compared to the ones that are just kind of all one value. If you have a letter or a shape kind of like this where there's just lots of sides all on one side, you might want to give some thought as to which sides might be darker than others. So I feel like these ones here are a little bit closer and probably are receiving more light, but the ones that are more sunken in are kind of more in the shadow. So I want maybe these sections to be a little bit darker overall than these three. So I'm going to consider that when I'm adding in my shading. So I'm just going to start with the same color and go back and just push these ones a tiny bit darker, kind of all the way down the length of the E. And you can see how even just that, making it a little bit darker, kind of makes them sink in a little bit and makes these ones pop out. I can obviously kind of take it a step further by adding in kind of an analogous or deeper tone of my green to really make that obvious. And I'm gonna do kind of maybe on this one, maybe it starts out a little bit lighter and I just shade a little bit heavier towards the back. And with these ones, I might take this darker green and go back and just make this a much deeper value towards the back here. So again, once you kind of finish adding some shading into some letters, it just really makes a big difference compared to ones that are just colored with one value.